All right. Okay. The exclamation mark episode 31 records in 3, 2, 1. Oh, I pushed play, not record. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Exclamation Mark podcast, the only podcast that will finish what you started. My name is Crofton Steers. I am the host of said podcast, but I do not do it alone. No, sir. I'm, if you will, the solid snake. I embark on these missions, but I need support, and that support is offered through my Otacon. And my Otacon is Bo Schwartz. Bo, welcome.
Why, hello there, Solid Crofton.
You're not sounding nerdy enough. Remember, Otacon's that like nerdy
Oh,
anime loving.
hello there, Solid
scientist.
Crofton.
There
We've
you
got the missile banks ready to fire on Afghanistan. We just need you to press down on your controller and then up, and that will initiate the act of war explosions.
But Otacon, can love truly bloom on the battlefield?
Love is a bullet, as you once famously said, Solid Crofton, and a bullet shoots people.
Speaking of bullets that shoot people, we're going to be shooting a sizable amount of gaming blah 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 into your brain this episode. We're going to do all our normal stuff. Talk about the news, talk about the games we're playing, talk about a topic that we pre-selected for discussion, and give you some recommendations, all the regular stuff. But before we do any of this, Bo, and I feel like I should give a disclaimer to people listening, although it's been a month or more than a month. So I feel like I don't need this disclaimer anymore, but I'm going to have to do it anyway. Bo and I are about to discuss Star Wars The Force Awakens. And I know that's not video game related per se, but it is a huge pop culture event. Bo and I want to talk about it. So if you have not seen Star Wars The Force Awakens, first off, congratulations on living in a cave. And secondly, you may want to fast forward. I don't know how long. We will stop talking about it eventually, but we've been waiting. Neither of us have even spoken about it outside of, in RL, as we call it, on the down low. So this is our first kick at the can, and I know it's a little late, but at this point, everybody should have seen Star Wars The Force Awakens. So again, last warning. We are going to be talking spoilerifically about Star Wars The Force Awakens. If you have not seen it and want to remain unspoiled, fast forward now or come back and listen to this episode at a future date. All right? I think I did a pretty clear job there,
It's
Bo?
a spoiler alert. We're talking Star Wars. And the reason we're doing it now is because we just tried to coordinate this and it didn't work out. And what we'd like to do, it just went on too long. Like, the hype has died down somewhat for talking about this, but we're not gonna wait. We can't wait any longer, and we're gonna speak about it. Yep, I think.
Okay, let's dive right in there.
Then we'll get to the normal show, but I want to, because we waited so long, let's just get it out of the way off the top.
Okay, Bo, before we talk about the movie proper, give me a bit of your personal background with Star Wars before this movie. Like, what were you a big Star Wars fan? Had you consumed a lot of Star Wars stuff? Were you just like a trilogy purist?
Like a lot of people, saw them, was introduced to them as a child, had them on video, loved watching them. Like, people in their 30s probably had a similar experience. Was never an overblown Star Wars nerd, but definitely always thought very highly of the movies, always very entertaining. They're great and iconic to a generation, at least to our generation, I'm sure. And when the prequels were announced, I was super stoked. I saw The Phantom Menace 3 times. Now, I am one of the people that will defend the prequels. The very unpopular opinion of the prequels, especially the first one, people like to take a giant shit on it, including the machete order to watch it, which completely excludes the Phantom Menace from the viewing. I think is uh, I think it's a travesty. I think that the prequels are decent. If you don't like the CG stuff, then I can't argue with you. It's not to say that you're wrong. I think they're okay. I've never been of the opinion that the Star Wars movies are, you watch them for certain reasons. Like they're entertaining and fun, and they have this great magical world that we get to be introduced to. So I've been a big fan of the prequels, although I do think the original trilogy is better. And I guess that's my history. Like,
Yeah, I'm similar, except for mostly hating the prequels.
yeah.
But aside from that, I would say the thing about Star Wars is that first off, we're in an era of geek, a smorgasbord of geek culture where we can watch, Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, all our favorite superheroes, all these sort of crazy things are on screen now. But once upon a time, that didn't exist. The only sort of science fiction or fantasy really was Star Wars, and it was really like something that captured my imagination as a child. It also was one of the first marketing phenomenon movies where there was toys, of which I had tons. I watched animated shows like Droids and Ewoks, which were like spin-offs of those movies. I was really into sort of Star Wars stuff, and then in college, we didn't have cable, and we would just play like the Indiana Jones movies and the Star Wars original trilogy over and over and over. And I'm dating myself a bit here, but the Phantom Menace came out right about then. And so we went to see it. I saw that movie like 5 times in theaters. As much as I will disavow it now, I definitely have seen it enough times. And so yeah, for me, Star Wars has always been important. It's always been something that's exciting. However, and I mentioned this on our sister podcast, the Good Bad or Bullshit podcast, when we talked about Star Wars. In terms of the Force Awakens and future Star Wars movies, of which there's going to be one every year, while I was tentatively excited, if I had had my way, there would have been no more Star Wars movies. I felt that they were unnecessary. I felt that the story had resolved itself at the end of Return of the Jedi. And so I was kind of a little dismayed to hear that they were going to proceed with one every year for the foreseeable future. And so that was sort of the mindset I was entering the theater with. I was tentatively excited. So that being said, Bo, what were your overall impressions of the new Star Wars movie, J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens?
Um, I enjoyed it. I thought it felt like Star Wars. I thought the music was very reflective of Star Wars. It felt like a Star Wars movie. So if there's any concern about it feeling commercialized and feeling unauthentic, I guess, those very excited to watch it and feel those set aside. Also, there was something to see the same characters in the movie. So, getting this Han Solo story, getting hints about Leia and Luke, but not getting everything. It's hard to say. It's hard for me to just say, yeah, it was good or yeah, it was bad, because I feel like this is part of a bigger chain of story. So what I can sort of say is that the ride of the movie was very good. I think if I had to look at the prequels, like the original series implied a greater world. The prequels tried to show all of it, and I think it probably came up short in that regard, is that it felt more like political this and trades here and this is happening. Like there's this complex world. So when I look at this current movie, and my feeling about it is that it was about the ride, and it wasn't really concerned with explaining a big part of the world, like there's a First Order and there's a Resistance, and I don't know, some unnamed planets get blown up, or some of them are named. Like it didn't matter while I was watching it. I was just sort of interested in Rey's and Finn's journey. So
but you don't like, and maybe I'm reading too much into your reaction here, but you're not sounding enthusiastic.
It was fun. It hit all the right notes Star Wars wise. I've seen better movies this year. Like I'm not. It's not up there. There's stuff about it that is like, I don't know.
So do you feel that it was like, because one of the main criticisms that's been leveled at it by other people, other podcasts, whatever, is that it matches too closely to A New Hope in sort of almost beat for beat, the hiding of the planes and the droid, all that sort of stuff. Did you feel that it was too much like A New Hope and that it wasn't differentiating itself?
Yeah, I mean, it is like, well, I wouldn't use the word plagiarism. It isn't a homage to the original movie because it's a movie in the same series of movies. It can't be an homage. It felt very much like that movie. So I'd agree with that. I think I think they played it very safe. Because I think if you're going in, you're like, man, we're making a Star Wars movie. This means a lot of things to a lot of people. Let's play the safe card. That's what the prequels didn't do. It didn't play it safe, and it upset people. But I'm willing to give it a pass because it's part of three movies. I think if we get to the end of three movies and it looks like the original trilogy, it's a functional remake. It's not a continuation of the story. I don't think there was anything bold about this movie that makes it memorable. And if they
See,
have like a,
I would I would
Kylo Ren is
disagree with that
raised.
point. I would say like whereas you have well, there's some big story beats that are the same. Like you've got your Death Star, Star Killer base, whatever you want to call it. You've got, droid plane it's hidden. You've got a kid on Tatooine equivalent, this another desert planet, whatever. All that stuff. I get that. But like the idea of making it that 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 the main villain was essentially like the petulant son of one of the characters that we grew up loving, and then or more, sorry, two of the characters we grew up loving, and then that character kills the most beloved character possibly in Star Wars in Han Solo. Um, I feel like not only is that a bold action, I feel like it's you know, how does this character be redeemed now? Because this is a character who, like, when you look at Darth Vader, he could not kill Luke. That was his weakness, essentially, or strength, depending on how you look at it. He could not do it. That was his moment of redemption. So here you have kind of the inverse of that, and I think that that's kind of bold, and it's not something that we had seen previously. Yeah, you saw Anakin fall to the dark side in the prequels, but it was with the caveat that you knew he would be redeemed. Here we have no sense that Kylo Ren will be redeemed, and in fact, he's just killed the one guy that I felt like who now could he hold a lightsaber to, and you think he wouldn't kill? He killed his own father. Like it's not going to be Leia because she's not like a combatant. She's more of a general. She's not going to be in a big lightsaber fight with him.
No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know.
I no, for me, it's going to end up.
There's a lot of track on this railroad we haven't seen.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
agreed. I'm just saying that's what's different about it. To me, that there are differences, and I agree. Almost everything you said, I agree. It was a total ride movie in many ways, but it was also a character building movie. It was a movie about characters, and I think that was one of the big criticisms about the prequels, which was that their characters were either one-dimensional caricatures or just not compelling, or it was, like you said, more about big world issues and less about individual characters. And like, no offense to Padme Amidala, she doesn't have much of a personality. Neither did many of the characters from the prequels. Whereas in this case, I thought that they took their three or four main new people. So Kylo Ren, Finn, Rey, and Poe Dameron, and by the end of the movie, you're like, yeah, I like or I'm invested in all these characters. So I thought they did a really good job in that regard of making you like sign up with those characters. It was just for me. and I know I've mentioned this to you before and other people before, and this is the big asterisk I'm going to put next to The Force Awakens as a movie. I would really have liked it, and I might be in the minority here. I really would have liked it if they had gone hundreds of years into the future or something and had these characters hold their own and have their own movie and maybe have droids or Chewbacca around or whatever. But by bringing back all these characters like Luke, Leia, and Han in particular, no offense to the actors or how well they have aged or haven't aged, like it doesn't really matter. The big thing is that Return of the Jedi ended on a pitch perfect note. It closed that story. Everybody was happy. All the characters I loved were happy. And now we're going to a world where essentially not only are things shitty for them, but they've been shitty for a long time, like the past 30 years. Like you find out what's happened to them. Luke's essentially tried to start a Jedi Academy, and then his sister and best friend's kid slaughtered all slaughtered all his students, and then he self-exiled himself to some shitty island. Meanwhile, like, Han and Leia's son turns to the dark side and then they get divorced or whatever, and Han is pretty much going around the galaxy like he was at the beginning of A New Hope, except now he's like pushing 70. It's kind of like, I don't know. I found all that kind of depressing. It was fun when I'm watching it, but then I think about it afterwards. I'm like, oh man, that sucks.
The one thing that was awesome was that Leia is a general, which was
wasn't she a general in Return of the Jedi?
I don't know, perhaps, but one of the things that, in light of the prequels, is that the Jedi were made like a lot of the way that storytelling goes, like in the Clone Wars and stuff, is it's General Skywalker, General Kenobi, like they're the generals in the clone army, and it's an interesting designation that she's a Force user, she's Force sensitive, that she's also a general, and that makes me think I hope Luke taught her something. I hope there's that she's not just gonna be I'm give instructions to people and I cry about Han. Like, I really hope she has a bigger role to play in the upcoming movies. Maybe even a saber battle. I would love to see that.
I'm doubtful of it, just because I feel like if there was any movie for her to have a bigger role to play, it would be this one where Han was still alive in it. Like, they could have had more interactions or more whatever for her to like sit on the sidelines most of this movie and then to be pushed. Like, I think they're going to push the new characters. She might serve as a mentor, but I can't see her being like, if anybody's going to be into the action, it's going to be Luke. But again, I think we all know Luke is going to die. He's either going to die in the next episode or the one after that.
The idea thus far is Luke is like the chosen one, right? It wasn't Anakin, it was Luke, the Redeemer. And that's the idea you get from the original trilogy.
Right.
But Leia's a twin. Like, she has equal claim to that throne as Luke does. But, because of the way the originals were written and conceived, Luke gets all the attention and she's a plot twist, basically. But if we're going to reopen all these wounds and think about this a little more rationally, she has equal claim to be the chosen one, given that she's a descendant of the fallen Skywalker, Anakin. So I hope they do more with her. I hope she's just not relegated to sideline duty. And I feel emboldened by that, because it looks like Rey is the main character of this Rey is the Luke of
Luke, right?
This,
yeah.
As far as we can see, unless they kill her off in the first 10 minutes of the next episode and really set us up for some real, depressing times.
She's the Luke. She's going to be, if anybody is going to be there till the end for me, it's her.
I put my money on that too, and. So, that shows a shift in, that's a huge role for a woman to have, considering how male-centric these stories have been to date. This is a really big deal. So I could see Leia playing a bigger role in the Force story. And here's my complaint about the way this, because you're right, it is depressing the way things has worked out. Luke, not single-handedly, he had the help of his friends and the Rebel Alliance, but he is the man, right? And under his watch, this First Order has sprung up in secret. Luke's a badass, and like, he's had lots of time to research, hone his skill, like, and he knows something's going on because Kylo Ren is in the thick of it. So if anything, and a bunch of planets die, and where the hell is Luke? Sitting on an island. that doesn't seem like the Luke that was presented to me at the end of Return of the Jedi. It seemed like he's a hero. Why would a hero sit on an island and do F all? So I'm eager to find out.
This falls back into my point, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. It's the same. It's the situation where they've decided to proceed with these movies from a marketing standpoint. They want to include the original cast to be like, this is a continuation of their story, and that now it introduces new characters. But the issue is that now all the new casts are older, and so they have to set it. They're forced to set it 30 years plus after, 40 years after the original trilogy, and so that leaves them having to explain what happened for 40 years and to have a proper antagonist in the spirit of Star Wars. So they're kind of hewn into a corner by this. Whereas if they had just gone, as I said, 100 years, 200 years forward, and done their own storyline well after Luke and Leia and could have been legend, people could talk about them. Like, I don't see the need to have them come back and do like a swan song and get lightsabered off. Because my feeling is that if Leia is the only one, now Han's dead, Luke for sure is going to die. I don't know if Leia makes it through the trilogy. I think if one of them does, it will be her. But I feel like they're all there just to get axed one after the other, and I'm not cool with that. That said, though, I really did enjoy the movie. It was much better than I anticipated it being, and I loved the new characters. I loved a lot of the approach that they did, and it left me and many other people with a lot of questions. So I'm positive about the movie. And like Bo, you said, it's the first step in a greater picture. I was disappointed with the fact that it kind of ruined my memory of a lot of these characters. So,
well, that was my general sense too. That that we were promised something, and now things have fallen apart, and this movie hasn't really put those pieces back together yet. And yet, I can't criticize it because I know it's part of a larger plan with respect to those films. So, that being said, I really enjoyed it. I thought the aesthetic was great. I thought the actors, the casting was great. I really enjoyed. I think Kylo Ren did a good job. That was the biggest thing. Darth Vader's Star Wars has always been a movie where you liked the bad guy like a lot, right? Like, he was very cool. You liked hating him, or you liked liking him. Some people identified with him. And, I think the verdict again on this is still completely out, but for all intents and purposes, people really enjoyed what Kylo Ren had to offer. And I was kind of worried that I was kind of worried that there would be he wouldn't live up to that sort of stature, and that there wouldn't be something behind. But the Smoke or Stoke or whatever. Spoke or what was this thing?
Yeah, but I'm like, they better have a good explanation for that character, because I don't get, I really have no idea what.
He's not a Sith. I think J.J. Abrams has in other in interviews has said this is not a Sith Lord. So, what is he? Like, what's going on? There's a lot that's going on with this story, and I think we just saw Act 1. Like, literally, I didn't feel like I watched a full movie. I felt like I watched a third of one. That's what I walked away.
Which is a bit unfortunate, because Star Wars Episode 4 was able to be a movie. Like, this was it didn't even know if it would have sequels. Like the first Star Wars. And so, like, they blow up the Death Star at the end. Everything kind of wraps itself up. And in this case, it does not. They know that they're world building, and they're part of a bigger series. So that kind of, I understand what you're saying. For me, it doesn't feel complete. It ends on a cliffhanger. It literally ends on a cliffhanger. Whereas the first Episode 4 ends with them getting their medals, like everything is closed off. So the last shot is a cliffhanger in this movie. I am excited to see the next one. I definitely will be. And I would say I am more excited than I was prior to seeing this movie. So now that this movie exists, and I can't go back and give a happy ending to all my characters, I really want to see where it goes. So I am stoked for Episode 8. The spin-off movies, I'm still like verdicts out on those so far, but I'm definitely excited for the next mainline Star
All right,
Wars.
so your overall verdict, because I think we need to move on to the other items of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah. My
But your
overall
overall
verdict,
verdict is you enjoyed it, worth seeing.
I give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd put it in 8 to 9 territory.
Yeah,
Can't decide.
Yeah, 8 out of
Also, oh,
as a movie, without any of the baggage, I don't
mhm.
think it would work as well. And then with the baggage, it damages your memories of the film. So I got to settle on 8. That's why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Also, one little mystery is who's Ray's parents. It shouldn't matter that much. It almost doesn't. But I kind of have a
it's
secret.
what everybody's kind of talking about, and I
I
know there's
kind of
like,
hope she's a Kenobi. That's sort of my guess. But I
yeah,
mean,
well,
what?
that's a popular rumor that's going around right
Yeah.
now. But then it leads to more filling of gaps and like, see, because the thing is like if she's Luke's kid, then you have to explain who the mother is and what happened to her. Like she's a character we don't know, and you have to introduce her. If she's Han and Leia's kid, well, then it's super easy because we know Han and Leia already. You just have to have some reason for why she got stranded on this desert planet, or how she got separated, or why they didn't acknowledge her in this movie as their child. If she's Kenobi's kid, then it's really complicated because you've got both her parents and whoever Obi-Wan had a kid with, like, because she'd be his granddaughter, right? So I mean, it's just like they have to do a lot of excuse me, a lot of explaining if
Yeah.
it's a Kenobi.
The theory
Whereas if
would
it's
be that it's a Mandalorian. I can't remember. It's a character they introduced in Clone Wars where Obi-Wan actually says, "If I ever had to leave the Jedi Order or break the Jedi Order, it would be with you." You know, someone he
so
guarded in his
maybe
young
that would be
years.
one out. Then you would need the kids. I'm just, but even that, it's like I think that they want to make it so that you watch the movies. You don't need to watch the Clone Wars. You don't need to watch any of that to get a sense. So they don't want to they don't want to have it be that her parents aren't recognizable to us. I think for sure. Like I bounce back and forth with Han and Leia and Luke, and right now I'm back to Han and Leia because I think that the climactic moment, if Kylo Ren has killed his own father,
Mm-hmm.
then that moment where he has to like face the dark side and light side and all this is, to me, has got to be when he thinks he's killing his, or he's fighting his own sister. If it's his cousin, then it kind of loses it. No offense to my cousins, but like I'd have an easier time fighting my cousins than I would my brothers. That's so I think it has to be a sibling. That's why I lean that way. But yeah,
And
I,
that's
I
the fact that he killed the father sets up a lot of motivation for wanting to help Kylo Ren and being angry at him. You know, so Rey's gonna have to go through the whole temptation to the dark side of the Force, right? Like that's the whole thing with, at least in the original movies, the whole conundrum with being a Force user, and I guess the prequels too, is, you know, the appropriate use and control of the Force for good, and not, not feeling like you have to get revenge, for example. You know, like what is Rey gonna? Rey doesn't have apart from feeling sad about being abandoned by her parents. I don't think if she's been mind wiped, she doesn't have like a "you killed my parents" blah, or something like that. So it's, like I said, there's so much that's not here in this.
I just wouldn't spend too much, and I tell you this, and I tell everybody this. I would not spend too much time. All you Star Wars nerds who know everything about every episode of Clone Wars or expanded universe or whatever, I wouldn't get too knee deep in spinning theories and all this, because J.J. Abrams won't be bound by any of that, and the creative mind bank behind the new Star Wars movies. They're going to make it so that if somebody only saw these movies, or only saw the original trilogy and these movies, that they will understand. So they're not going to go too crazy off of characters that aren't introduced in the movies. Is what I would say. So you see people talking about like maybe Rey's parents are these two Jedi's that were only in some comic book. I'm like, it's probably not the case. So that's the one warning I give. But I'm enthused about Star Wars again, so they did something right.
All right then. Well, this is a great conversation. I look forward to talking about it with you even more, because we're definitely gonna be seeing it again on video and stuff like that.
we need to get into video games, and I think we'll just start by going over some of the news stories as we like to do that are of interest to us this week in a segment we call readme.txt.
All right, I'm stopping it there,
Oh,
and I know
thank
you gotta
God.
go pee. Thank God. Oh, it's so funny, man.
God.
Hey,
So
man, welcome back.
that Pepsi Max isn't looking so good in the rear view.
No,
Did
I suppose it. I suppose it wouldn't.
so?
I don't.
How long do we spend talking about Star Wars?
Half hour.
Okay.
It's
Shit.
a long
We
time.
should have made it the dialogue tree. Now that I think about it in retrospect, that should have been what it was.
All right,
Like,
no, we're good. We're good. We're Gucci.
all right,
So
let's.
let's just move briskly through the readme.txt. Let's do that. All right, we don't need to dwell too long on it,
Perfect.
and that way we can hurry up and get to dialogue tree. Same with games per minute.
Okay,
All right, so I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna trick the recording on, then do the sound. Okay.
you got it.
readme.txt.
All right, so we have talked Star Wars long enough. Now we are into the video game sphere, or are we, Bo? Because before we talk any more video game stuff, I just wanted to mention a little piece of pop culture that is on the periphery of my brain, which is a Daredevil season 2. Netflix has announced that it not only is it coming in March, that the Punisher, who is going to be the main antagonist of this season, is going to get his own Netflix show spun off of the Daredevil show. And I was a big fan of the first season of Daredevil. I just recently finished watching Jessica Jones, which is also a really good show. I think people had low expectations and it blew those out of the water. But I think, I'll have to let it percolate in my brain a little bit. But I feel that Daredevil was more enjoyable to me. Um, Maybe the more action and that sort of stuff. And I've always loved Daredevil as a character. So I am pretty stoked. Have you seen any of this sort of screenshots of the new season of Daredevil that they've released?
No, I haven't actually, but I'm going to look it up right now because we can do that.
Well, they have so Elektra's going to be in it as well as
There was
Daredevil.
there was a trailer I heard.
The trailer is more than a teaser. It's more of a teaser of it than a teaser is. Like essentially, it's a bunch of clips from the first season shown over a stained glass window. It really had zero new content. So
Hmm.
it doesn't really tell you much. It gets you stoked because you're like, yeah, Daredevil season 1 was so awesome. But at the same point, it doesn't really get you going for season 2 other than make you excited about the characters. So the Punisher, and they talked about their costumes and how they're going to evolve through the season, and they don't want to reveal too much. They don't want it to be too traditional superhero-y, but supposedly both the Punisher and Elektra will end up in kind of comic book-esque duds by the end of the season. And so I'm excited for Daredevil season 2, and the photos they've shown of the characters, and the way they say that it's going to unfold. Supposedly, it's more about where season 1 was sort of the origin of becoming a hero. Season 2 is more asking the question what it means to be a hero. So
Hmm.
so Daredevil is one type of hero. Is the Punisher a hero or not? And if so, like Daredevil refused to kill the Kingpin in season 1. Here he's faced with a guy that's kills everybody. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and I feel in many ways this resonates with the main Spider-Man storyline as well. So yes, Daredevil season 2. They keep dropping tidbits. I'm excited.
Well, they did a really good job with the first one, so I'm all in on the second season. For sure love that the Punisher's in there. The Punisher's never gotten his real due, I think, in the movies, even though they've been entertaining. I love the actor they picked for it. It's like he was born to play Punisher.
Shane from The Walking Dead.
Yeah, Jake Barenthal or something like that, I think is
Oh,
his name,
Barenthal.
or John Barenthal. I don't. Yeah. But yeah, it's Shane from Walking Dead. Perfect. He's a perfect Frank Castle. And I like the Punisher as a hero because he's like full vigilante mode. Like I dig it, and that is gonna put him in conflict with all kinds of heroes. Daredevil, chief among them. This is a great character to add, I think, to the show.
One thing I like about it too is that he's a character that I like, but I like more in terms of his interactions with other characters. I can't support him as a hero, and therefore I like. I like more seeing him play off other characters, which will be what this season will be about. So, whereas Daredevil is a character I can get behind more easily. So,
Sure,
anyway,
the Punisher's just a homicidal murderer. Like
yeah,
with a
no,
like
he,
that's
he
the
is.
like we anyone who is like that person in real life, we say you can't do that. You can't walk into some place and shoot the people you think deserve punishment.
Yeah.
You're not a hero. You're an asshole. Even if you are killing bad guys, maybe they're not like maybe they don't deserve the punishment. We check out Good, Bad, or Bullshit. We did an episode on vigilantism. He's basically the worst elements of vigilantism personified in a character, and so you
And
know,
he's an extreme, right? Like okay, so Spider-Man and Batman, everybody always talks like about Batman and why doesn't he kill the Joker, or Spider-Man and like guys like Carnage, why he doesn't kill them, because they're going to kill so many people, and if they just killed this one guy, and Batman will say, how it's a slippery slope, or and have his code, but the Punisher is complete the other way. Like he will kill everybody all the time. And it's funny because Spider-Man and Batman are Care Bears on one side, and then the Punisher is the complete other side. But you have very few heroes. I would argue Wolverine might be one of them that more fits in the middle, that will kill but doesn't always kill. There's not that many of those heroes. Either you don't kill or you're a homicidal maniac. It seems like that's how comic books work.
well, it's a mature take on vigilantism. Anyways, Daredevil season 2, I'm all in on it. You should be too if you like comic book stuff. All right, what's next, Crofton? You got there's a list here.
So yeah, okay. Moving into the video game world. Zelda, everybody's been anticipating this new Legend of Zelda game. It's going to be an open world Zelda game. It's going to be the first Zelda in HD, like designed for HD. Title is yet to be announced. It's supposedly coming this year. I think more than likely. However, everybody expects that Nintendo is going to announce probably in the first or second quarter of the year the details surrounding their new video game console, tentatively dubbed the NX. And at which
Yuck,
point,
yuck.
What?
NX. I
That's just a
disapprove.
project. It's a project
I
name.
hope
Like
so.
all.
I hope so.
No, but the Dolphin was the Nintendo 64, I think. The like they all have project. Nobody sticks to their project name. Morpheus ended up being PlayStation VR. Like nobody sticks to their project name. The project name is the NX. So the thing is that Nintendo's going to be in a situation where it's probably going to be releasing new hardware this year, maybe in the latter half of the year. Zelda is going to come out this year. Zelda has been designed for the Wii U. Um, do they pull a Twilight Princess? Which was, if you recall, when the Wii came out at the tail end of the GameCube's lifespan, they essentially released a GameCube version and a Wii version of the same game. What was so funny about that was that Link is a lefty, but because most people are righties, Twilight Princess, the Wii version was flipped completely. So all the dungeons where you would turn left, you'd turn right instead. Everything because he's holding his sword in the other hand, and they just reversed. They mirrored the whole game. It's quite a crazy thing that they did. So for this one, I don't see how. Like they must already be working on a port. Like it was designed for Wii U, or does it only release for Wii U as the swan song? In which case, that's really going to limit the amount of people that play it. So you've got this new system that's launching, but your big game of that year only launches on your last gen system that nobody owns. I mean, it seems like a huge marketing blunder. Yeah, they'll probably port it over eventually, but it'll take a while. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Zelda this year. Because honestly, I want to play Zelda. So do I buy a Wii U, which is dead, or do I just wait for the new system and it'll be released on that? So I'm gonna wait for details to see before opening my wallet.
How's your consumer confidence on the next Nintendo thing? Because the Wii U, it was not out too long, right? Do I have
No,
that right?
no, it's in my in Nintendo is feeling the heat and stuff like that. Look, it's either going to be their last video game console ever, like hard in their house, in your house, or it's going to be the start of a resurgence. But I will say that like it's going to last a few years, maybe three, minimum three. In which case, my daughter is going to be a little bit older, like she'll be maybe 5, 6, and I'll want her to I'll want to start playing those Nintendo type games with her. So I'll want to have a console that can play them. So there is that. Also, I think Wii U was such a bust, like in terms of sales,
Yeah.
that I feel like all their major games will be ported to the next system in some way. The next system will be able to play them in some way. And I feel like there's maybe 5 or 6 Wii U games that I'd be really keen on playing. Not not enough that I really want to shell out for a Wii U at this point, knowing that it's dead. But if I could play those games, I would be happy. So I'm going to for sure look at their next system very closely.
All right. Well, stay tuned here. We'll give you all the Zelda updates as they happen, since Crofton's super into it. What's this about possible unannounced games of 2016? Let's go. We talked a ton about some of the new stuff coming in 2016 last week, although we didn't plan on it. Unannounced stuff? Anything that you're curious might?
Well, yeah, I am curious about games that have yet to be, because you convinced me last week about this year being much better than I thought.
Yes.
And I took a look at a couple of articles, listened to a couple of podcasts, and everybody's talking about like the lineup of games, and some of them, I'm looking at you, Mass Effect, will be pushed back till 2017, I'm pretty sure. But there's a lot of good games coming out this year, but I also feel like every year at E3 or before, there's announcements made about games that come out later. Like Fallout 4 wasn't announced this time last year, and then it came out in the same year it was announced. It was announced right before E3, if you remember. So there's a lot of games that could be announced now. Though I'll be honest, the one that I've got my eye out for is, and I'm not sure if 1 year is too short a turnaround, but a new Rocket League, or a Rocket League expansion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I could see big things happening with Rocket League this year, and I'm super into that game. So I would be all up in there if there was a new Rocket League. Um, but there's other games I'm sure like they haven't announced the new details, I think, for the next Call of Duty yet. That comes out every year for sure. I think Assassin's Creed said they might be taking this year off, which good for them. But like the Watch Dogs 2, I've heard speculated for this year, uh,
Ooh.
filling the gap for Ubisoft that
Mm.
Assassin's Creed leaves. So I mean, I'm excited to see what some of these games are. I don't know what they are. I'm not sure if you're speculating. You generally have your ear to the ground around Blizzard. Do you think Blizzard's going to announce or release anything this year that they haven't?
Well, there's all kinds of news, with respect to heroes. Like there'll be 13 more hero. Like it's little
No, I
stuff,
mean
not full
games.
Overwatch. No, there's everything's a known element with them because they're years in development and they usually have extensive beta testing before release. So there doesn't like the things that we're interested in hearing about. I guess in 2016 at BlizzCon next fall, there's got to be a new expansion or Diablo 4. There's got to be some new content. They're still supporting the existing game, so I think it's going to be an expansion if it's anything. We didn't get it this year, so I imagine they're going to announce next year. And we'll probably get more news around what the long-term plan for Overwatch maybe looks like, depending on its reception this year. And there's mission everything else has been announced. So the only real question mark there is there another IP in development there? We don't know.
Yeah.
No one's
Do they have another MMO going on?
no, Project Titan was canceled. I mean, they may be
Yeah.
working on other things. Hearthstone was a big surprise when it got announced. No one saw that coming. So who knows what other teams they have off to the side. That game was 5 years in development before it got even announced. As a mini project, a for fun thing that they set aside some money, gave some developers some running room, and just said, make something. And turns out people started liking it, and more development money got thrown on it as it gained in popularity within the company. So who knows what else like that is worked on and scrapped or worked on and on its way out the door. I really think Blizzard is not going to be the MMO company that we know in the future. I think World of Warcraft's it. I think, and this is a bigger subject for like a dialogue tree, but I think that MMO gaming as as like a popular business, as a big time business is over. We have MMO, like Twitch is like the MMO experience. Like the social aspect of gaming is alive and well in traditional MMO structures that I don't, with Reddit and with, Discord is now a big app for voice communications with strangers. You can drop into Discord chat channels. I think that, it's just going to be diehards who like that multi-user dimension MMO experience that want it, and it's not going to be pop. I think Warcraft's client base are the client base they've earned. Like it's not new customers. It's very few new customers. It's a lot of returning customers. So
Just going back to unannounced games though, like
yeah.
that's so.
Sorry, I got sidetracked.
No MMO is what you're
I
saying.
know.
Okay.
Diablo 4. If I had to wish for something, it would be that, but nothing confirmed.
Yeah, I think at E3 this year you're going to see a bunch of games announced. Some of which will come out this year, and I'm almost anticipating that stuff more than what I know is coming out, because a lot of what's announced is sequels and known commodities. But yeah, so I am excited for the unannounced games, and I think that I've turned a corner on 2016 and think it could be even better than 2015 for gaming, which was a seminal year for
Yeah,
gaming. So
big VR year. Lots of unannounced stuff for VR.
I know that's another big unannounced VR games, like because there's very few of the games that are currently launching with the Oculus and stuff that I'm very excited about. I'm sure Sony is going to have a bunch to support PlayStation VR, so I'm very keen to see what those games are and what sort of experiences we'll get. So
All right. Well, that's Crofton's take on 2016. A few other items, real quick. We're gonna dance through them. If you like Metal Gear Solid, that is the original one for PlayStation. Someone's remaking it in Unreal Engine 4.
until Konami comes and shuts them down tomorrow.
Basically. So if you're into this thing, check out the trailer. it's always fun to see what if. So have a
Why
look at
do
the
people
trailer.
do this? Why do they, when they don't have rights to something, do this when they know how it's going to end? Like,
Yeah.
why?
Well, here's okay. Well, we're actually going to talk about this in the dialogue tree, but here's a
Oh,
thought.
spoiler.
When
Okay,
you're
I could wait till later.
Yeah, here's a thought about IP that you can sit with till we get there, which is when you're a fan of something and you're such a fan that you want to make something with the beauty that's been created by someone else, why does someone else get to sit on it that you're not allowed to make a thing? You know? Like we get that it needs to be protected, but at the same time it's not a static artifact. Like, you don't go to Michelangelo's sculptures and decide you're going to smash them because that's your artistic interpretation on it. But you can take a copy and make your own. So sit with that for a second, because and we'll have a deeper discussion. So, anyways, if you're into Metal Gear Solid fan remake Unreal Engine 4, hopefully it makes it to the end. If you're going to replay Metal Gear Solid, I'd rather play a great update than the old shitty version. Even though it's a classic, it's got poopy graphics. Darkest Dungeon launches this week. Small news item. It's been in early access for a long time.
You mentioned liking that one.
Yeah, I love this game. I'm looking forward to really digging in now that it's in full launch. I don't think there's much. There's a lot that's changed since I've talked about it. They've had a new class and new bosses and stuff like that. But I don't know what's in the full release. But it's now fully released, and it's a big recommend if you like roguelikes. This is a great, unique take on the roguelike, and even there's a review. I like the review from Tycho, and it's like, if you've ever loved me, play this game. And I'm like, Penny Arcade guys are well respected in this kind of thing, so they're big time proponents of. I think they have something to do with it getting created too. I think there's more to it than just a review, but
I'm stoked to try that game. Honestly, it's a lot of buzz around it, and I asked you how polished it was when you talked about it in early access, and it sounded pretty near complete then. So
it's not a story game. There's no narrative, although there is a narrator who is awesome. It's just awesome flavor to have while you play the game, but it's a gameplay game, not a story game.
Okay.
So also, we talked a lot about Star Wars, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there was a fantastic skit on SNL where Adam Driver, who is the guest, who plays Kylo Ren in Star Wars, does an episode of Undercover Boss, and it's quite good. So you should.
The thing that's cool too is like Disney is handling the Star Wars property really well, because honestly, there's no way. I know it falls under satire, but there is no way that they made that skit without Disney's involvement. The storm, from the stormtrooper suits to the special effects and all that. They definitely gave their blessing.
The saber looked authentic too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Everything was, and that's what, and the fact they actually had Adam Driver and he just totally sold it as Kylo Ren again, made it all the better. So I definitely recommend people check that out. But I also kudos to Disney for, Bo just mentioned about IPs and protecting them and all that. This is an example of a company being loose enough to realize like how to maintain the popularity of their thing, like don't be authoritarian.
Yeah. I wonder if they're all owned by Viacom or something like that. Anyways, but still, it's still a great, it's good use of the IP in other arenas for promotion and for our enjoyment. So, yeah. All right, so let's move on to games per minute real quick.
Games per minute.
About making kids' minds like vegetables. Talk about them out on the street smoking pot.
This is Games per Minute.
How do you feel about cutting his head off? One.
All right, this is Games per Minute, where we talk about the games we've been playing. I want to get through this real quick so we can get to the dialogue tree, Crofton, if there's no objections. I've been playing Heroes of the Storm.
Oh yeah, I know that game.
Done. Gen Greymane got released. He's fun. He's not OP, but he's fun.
What is he? Sorry, just what character?
He's a Worgen, which is the Warcraft's take on werewolf. There's a race of people that turn into werewolves, and so you shoot from range as a British sounding dude, for Gilneas, and then you can charge in. Like there's this instant, transform into a werewolf and descend upon your enemies and cut them with your claws. That's his kit, and he's really fun, and it's been a great week.
So I'm playing the same games I was last week. I barely touched Fire Emblem Awakening this week, although I'm going to. I found it really hard to juggle it with Metal Gear Solid 5. They're both similar in that there's like they're involving missions with a sizable amount of like menu interaction. And I'm playing Rocket League, and honestly, I keep playing more and more Rocket League. I'm the thing I don't understand about it, and its hold on me, is the fact that you don't get really rewarded with much. Like when you're playing a MOBA or something like that, like all the ranking system and the reward structure. Like in Hearthstone, you'd get gold, and you could use them to buy card packs, and there's constant sort of like reward structure. Where in Rocket League, there is really like you can go up ranks where it says instead of rookie, you're a semi-pro or a pro or whatever, and there's a couple of like bronze league and all that sort of stuff that you can climb, but really you're not getting anything for playing it. You just play it because it's super fun, and as soon as the game's over, I'm like, I want to play another game. And it really digs into my time for some of these larger, more involving single player games like Metal Gear Solid, which I'm still into, but I find that it's sort of sometimes a slog for me to turn it on. Once I turn it on, I'm playing it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is really fun. I remember all the things I like in it, but yeah, Rocket League has been distracting me from playing it. And I've put 60 hours into Metal Gear Solid 5, and I'm probably not even half done. So it's a huge game.
Yeah, well, this is gonna be the Metal Gear Solid show for the next coming weeks. Any amazingly stupid things happened in that game since the last time we talked? Last time it was child soldiers. I wanted to call last week's episode featuring child soldiers, but I felt like if you didn't listen to the episode and we're just judging on the surface, you might feel like we're a couple of assholes and never listen to the show, and I'd feel bad about it. So,
there's been a lot more missions with child soldiers, and each one always says, like in the credits when you're landing, it always says featuring child soldiers. That's still
it's
there.
A new Kanye West song featuring child soldiers.
there's now a virus that has kind of overtaken my base.
Shit.
And you have to like quarantine all these people, and it's really annoying how you do it. Like, because I have like 680 people in my base, and so I have to go through this list and select them one by one and put them into quarantine. I tried to look online to see if there was a better way of doing it, but there wasn't. So I spent like what would be the equivalent of 2 or 3 Rocket League games going through a spreadsheet list and like quarantining people. That's the thing about this game. It's got some moments of pure joy and action and excitement and stealth when you're doing these missions and you have all these options of how you want to approach them. But then it has like spreadsheet simulator when it comes to your base management. And there's just so much of it. If I could just like cut all that out of the game, I would. The last thing I'd say about Metal Gear is they've introduced a multiplayer segment where I can invade other places, other bases. I know I touched on this last week. So I've invaded a couple of people's bases. But the problem is if they're not online, which most of the time they're not, pretty much all of the time, then I never fight anybody. So I just go into their base and I capture it and get a few of their people or whatever. And it's not really overly compelling, and nobody ever attacks me back, which probably means none of those people are actually still playing the game. They're probably all done playing it, and so one day they'll turn it on like 2 months from now and they'll be like, who is this guy and why did he attack me?
Well, I already kind of got bored listening to all that Metal Gear Solid stuff. Where's the funny crap? Did Kiefer Sutherland tell anyone to lick his boots?
One thing that's interesting about Kiefer Sutherland is that I went back and I started playing some Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, which is sort of like the glorified demo almost for the game. Honestly, he does more voice acting for that thing, the Ground Zeroes, than he does in Phantom Pain. Like, it's ridiculous how little voice acting he does. There's all this crap that happens around him and he's just like standing there with his arms crossed. People are talking to him and he never responds. Like, it's clear to me that it was a voice acting contract thing. Like, why does he speak so little? It makes no sense.
Well, especially in the Metal Gear context where everyone talks way too much.
And Snake, and the Snakes always have too. Like, this is the same character who was Naked Snake in Metal Gear Solid 3, who was always talking up a storm on his calm Link. Why is he so quiet all of a sudden?
Naked
Because Kiefer's
Snake.
a cheap ass or whatever. I don't know.
I wonder. Yeah. Anyways, cultural things don't translate well. Check out Naked Snake. All right. And so you've been playing Fire Emblem, Metal Gear Solid, and Rocket League.
Rocket League.
We had a couple games, right? We had some fun.
Yeah.
Rocket League's an
honestly,
alright
and that's
game.
another thing. Like with Rocket League, it's like pick it up and play it with you, and it's even more fun. So, I mean, it's really annoyingly addictive.
Yeah.
So-
Here's another thing too. You were talking about your unannounced, like what could be coming in 2016. There's already a lot of great stuff. Bring on the Rocket League clones. They're in development right now. Like everyone's like, oh shit, they won 2 Game Awards, and everyone's giving them money. Here comes Rocket Soccer, and here comes
some dodgeball game on Steam.
Rocket Dodgeball. Cars with
No, it wasn't. It was some other sort of. But like the thing that Rocket League's going to resuscitate, and you could call the Rocket League clones if you will, and in many ways they are, but is arcade sports, which I love. Like you remember on the NES and other stuff there, I played like Bad News Baseball and like NHL Hits hockey where the
Smash
goalies,
Bros.
NBA Jam. And all these games that are just not realistic at all, and stuff blows up and all that sort of stuff. Like those games are going to come back, and man, those are the fun sports games for sure.
There was a game
hope
at one point, Mega Man Soccer, that I always wanted to rent, but I never did. I think it was Mega Man Soccer.
Yeah, Mega Man Soccer.
I never played it, but whenever I was always like, oh man, I really want to try that game. I never did. Just a random thought. All right, let's get into the dialogue tree. How about that?
Sure.
Now that there's one fine dialogue tree. All right, this is the dialogue tree where we pick a subject for discussion on this week's episode of the podcast, the exclamation mark. And this week, considering the Metal Gear Solid fan remake, what is it, Shadow Moses? What a weird name.
No, that's the name of the base that's invaded in Metal Gear Solid.
It's still a weird name. Like, it's just Shadow Mode. Like, anyways.
No, because Metal Gear Solid fans will know what it means, where it doesn't probably encroach on copyright.
I'm so worried about criticizing anything Metal Gear Solid. Like, that sounds stupid. Like, no, but it's named this because that. Anyways, in light of that news article, and we've kind of broached the subject on the show before, let's have a conversation about how aggressively should video game companies protect their intellectual property when fans create remakes of older IP, older games, or new chapters in their IP for distribution. So, Deus Ex needs an overhaul. It gets it. So, fans make it. This Metal Gear Solid is an example. I'm trying to think of, other examples of games that have this. I know the old Sierra games, King's Quest, there was a new chapter in development for a long time by fans that got shut down by Vivendi, I think, at the time, or whoever it was.
I think it got re-released. I think they ended up releasing it, but like under a new sort of branding.
But it was plagued with troubles, and you think, who gives a crap about the King's Quest? Like, make a new chapter. No one's like that. They're not in the zeitgeist anymore. But it's still an IP owned by a company that felt like it had to protect it. I think there was another famous one too of recent note that I can't think of. But where is the line in this? So let me start off by giving my opinion. I think that when you create something and put it out there in the world and that people really enjoy it, I find it very encouraging, and I think you would find it flattering that people want to make their own art and make their own cosplays and make their own editions of the game. I think one I saw was actually StarCraft 1 being remade in the StarCraft 2 engine. I don't think that's been shut down yet, but I feel like Blizzard might, they still sell StarCraft on their store. I think if that ever got legs, they'd send cease and desist. So at what point can, take an old game and say, well, we want to reinterpret it. We want to update it to engage current audiences who are, if you're in your teens, why would you play an old crusty game when you're going to play a game that has HD graphics? Why would you care? Where if someone went out and updated it, that's their passion. They know computer programming. They have the tools to express their art this way. Do you think do you think companies should embrace this more and let people, do these fan remakes and not feel the need to aggressively protect their IP?
Well, I think that you and I are in a situation where it's very easy to turn on the corporations because we're not in their position at all. Like we're just it's essentially calling for the socialism in video games or like for freedom for companies to just like let anybody do whatever with their licensed property. And I can understand where that would be really tempting, and part of me would like that. But I think that there has to be limits in what can be done. And I think stuff like remakes in particular are, and you talked about mods as well, and I think mods are okay. And companies are much more flexible with mods because if you have, say, Deus Ex and you have a mod to make it look nicer, well, that's pretty good. You've bought Deus Ex and everybody has to buy it to have that mod to make it look nicer. But if you're releasing an entire new game for free or whatever, using the properties or assets or ideas of another game, then it's within their right, I think, to either want some sort of money for it or to at least have been able to grant you permission to do it. So it's a fine line to walk, and I'll tell you, Bo, before copping out on the answer, a company that did learn to walk that line is Resident Evil 2 and Capcom. Sorry, Capcom and Resident Evil 2. So last year, Capcom shut down a fan remake project for Resident Evil 2 called Resident Evil 2 Reborn. So it was canceled. This company called Invader Games was making it, which is kind of funny that you have this small company. It's probably just a few people, but like they have a branding and they're like, hey, we're making a game called Resident Evil 2 and we're not, we're not asking Capcom if it's okay or whatever. But what Capcom did is they said to Invader Games, why don't you come and meet us on official terms and we'll talk about it. And so they came in, and supposedly now there is an official Resident Evil 2 remake that's been announced. There's a very strong likelihood that either Invader Games employees were involved in that, or like Capcom, instead of just burning the house down, they brought them in and they said like, okay, how can we talk about, what are your ideas, and maybe we can work something out there. So I think that's I think that's good for them. But on the other hand, had they just let them make this Resident Evil 2 game, that would for sure have cut into future profits for them. Like Resident Evil 2 is one of the most beloved Resident Evils, and Resident Evil 1 remake was just released in HD to tons of money in sales on Steam and on the consoles. So I feel like they would be burning money by letting some startup just steal their properties and make a remake of their existing game. So I think there's a line they have to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good point. That's actually a really good example of a game that when you remake something better and it's something that you could easily just re-release yourself, or a lot of games are having a second life these days with on the iPad or on Steam or on classic good old games. So yeah, I mean, someone updating your game in that way definitely undermines it, and I think company, the way we have our life structured has a right to protect its existing IP. But I think you look at a lot of beloved franchises that don't have their games out, and there's something to fan community made games that aren't sold for profit that should be celebrated, I guess, a bit more. Like, I feel like, I don't know, you feel like you wish you'd see a little bit more companies going like, wow, these guys are doing this new entry into the Deus Ex series. It's not official canon, but it's really cool. You should check it out or something like that. You don't really see that. Like, you'll see that with art. So if I was to, fall in love with Clouds, well, maybe Square Enix is a bad example of a company that does it. But let's say I'm a painter and I paint a Garrosh Hellscream, and I draw it to Blizzard's attention, they're going to tweet it out. They do that all the time. They're like, look at what this fan made about our game. It's amazing. But if I'm like, hey guys, I'm a programmer and I reprogrammed classic World of Warcraft from scratch and updated it in Unreal Engine 4, which actually someone is rendering Azeroth currently. I don't know if that will ever finish, but they did Elwyn Forest and Westmarch in Unreal Engine 4. You know, you don't hear them going like, hey, look at what this guy's doing in Unreal 4. It's pretty cool, you know, like. So it's just weird. Like all the ancillary stuff that doesn't directly affect profit, it become organic marketing for a company, and yet people who do program things that are fans of your IP have to rely on third-party sources for distribution of hype, or just to share what the cool thing you did was. And as long as it's not for profit, like if a company's going out there and just reselling the game branded as what it is, they're a clear violation. But if it's a fan created community thing, like I know Nintendo's very aggressive about stamping out people who want to make another Super Metroid, and they protect their IPs very aggressively. I mean, they protect their IPs on YouTube for Let's Plays. They're not even a big fan of that stuff. So
Yeah, I think that you raise some good points, but I just think that in terms of like being a company and protecting your assets, if somebody gives away something for free, it could potentially devalue your product. Also, the content of it could be questionable. In Nintendo's case, they're so concerned with being family friendly that they don't want to take any risks and lose control of any of their assets. But what frustrates me is, I'm going to give you an example of there's games that are canceled, okay, and that they never see the light of day, and often they're canceled near completion. The one that jumps to my mind, because we talked about Daredevil Season 2, is in 2004, Encore Software developed this game called Daredevil, and for the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. It was so close to being released. It was so close to being released that they were running ads in comic books at the time for the game. Like it was pretty much done, but at the end got canceled at the last minute. I would like to have seen them make that game either available to somebody to complete it, and maybe issue it for free. Now they're not going to do that because Daredevil is owned by Marvel. There's money to be made in an eventual Daredevil product. But if you look at this game was canceled in 2004. Nothing has happened, and we're 2016. There has been no Daredevil video game in that time. And maybe following the success of the TV show, there'll be a video game. Who knows? Maybe there will be. But there hasn't been since 2004. And the only reason that the game in 2004 couldn't have been finished is because everybody knows that if somebody tried to finish it, they would get sued. So, I mean, it's kind of like you can't even finish half-baked projects. And maybe the reason is, well, that project was canceled because A, it's shitty, or B, it was in violation of the rights. I'm just going to go on a quick aside here. Mm-hmm. I worked at Ubisoft way back when they were working on distribution and for the Matrix Online. And Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment didn't exist then. So Warner Brothers, they outsourced to companies their games. And so they outsourced the Matrix Online, and they were absolutely Monolith was the creator of the game, and Ubisoft was in charge of distribution and customer support because it was an MMO. Anyway, Warner Brothers was absolutely determined to ensure that every part of its copyright was protected. And I'll tell you how minute we're talking here. We're talking about the exact shade of green, tint of green that is on your screen when you're in the Matrix to show that you're in the Matrix. If it's different tints, then it's outside of their they had copyrighted the shade of green, and they were allowing use for this game or whatever, but they wanted to be sure they had experts like looking at the green to be sure it matched up with their copyright green and all that sort of thing, right?
Damn! Wow. Okay.
Like that's the amount of detail these guys go into when they think that there's sort of money on the table, and in terms of protecting the identity of their stuff. And like when in the case of like the Metal Gear remake that just came out, Metal Gear 5 is like one of the best, not the best selling game of last year, but it was one of the best reviewed game of last year. That is a very active IP. That's not dormant in any way, shape, or form. So for some guy to go out and make a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1, I can guarantee you, not only has there already been a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 on GameCube and stuff, but there will definitely be another remake of Metal Gear Solid 1. That is a game that will be remade 10 times before I am dead. And so for him to go on and say, hey, look, I'm remaking it in the Unreal Engine, maybe that's good to get attention. But like, I mean, really, it seems like a boneheaded move. You're going to get shut down, like it's just a matter of if they invite you like Capcom did to participate in an actual remake or not. So
you're saying he'd be better served by coming up with his own. Like, he can do that on his own for fun, but like if he wants to share a project or do a project, he should try and think of something mechanics maybe inspired by the genre or something, but he should do something original.
Or remake something that's dormant, something that's not active. Like if I'm like, hey, I'm gonna make Fallout 5, I'm gonna remake Fallout 1, I'm gonna remake the Elder Scrolls Arena. I'm like, okay, those games are still owned and operated by Bethesda. You should go check with them before you do that, because you could just be wasting your time. And I guess like the Capcom story with Resident Evil, that can be enticing to people. They're like, well, maybe if I do this, it's going to get publicity, and then maybe the company will reach out to me, and then maybe I'll get a sweet job. Like maybe that's what they're thinking, but it just seems like really stupid. Like it's one thing, the King's Quest guys, like I think it's a Silver Lining or something, the name of the game.
The Silver Lining, yeah, is what it's called.
Yeah. Anyway, that's King's Quest was dormant like before the relaunch of Sierra earlier this year. Like so that made perfect sense for them to go out and do that. I totally understand that. But don't it's like if I made a remake of Jazz Jackrabbit. It's like Epic owns it. I know.
Really digging into the crate of vintage there.
Yeah, like the deep cuts. I'm sure Epic owned it, Jill of the Jungle or something. But like I can make a remake of those games, and maybe I'm still taking a risk because I don't own the property though. So like
someone probably owns it. Those things don't expire, I think, for 50 years, and that's if you don't renew it. If you know.
That's right. But some of them might not care, especially if I'm making just a little free sample. Anyway, it's tough because I understand you don't want it to be the Wild West. And going back to your point, in terms of like, say I want to make a Star Wars fan film, okay? I've seen some really great Star Wars fan films, but none of them could be mistaken with a Star Wars actual movie. But video games, especially with the Unreal tools, somebody could literally make a video game that is in comparative quality to a mainstream game that's out now. And that's why they have to be even tighter on those things with video games, because the guy's remake of Metal Gear Solid could honestly, like, especially if he had, I don't know what he does for voice acting or sound or whatever, but it could be really good, if he's good in Unreal, it could be really good. So,
well, I think I agree or understand and acknowledge everything you said. Like, I don't disagree. I just think there's something to the conversation that we're, you're a company, yes, but you put something, like we could take Star Wars and all the fan stuff that gets made around Star Wars, that stuff's important. It doesn't have to be a commercial success for it to be important, not only to the person who made it as an exercise in self-fulfillment, but to other people. You want to share the things that you create and bring people joy. And if they contain, characters, or even if you're just like, let's make a home movie recreating the Star Wars movie, but with the family as actors or whatever, like, fucking do that and share it with people and distribute it. But probably the way that it works legally is you could get shut down, or you could be discouraged, or get a cease and desist. I think it's crappy when companies do that. In cases where people are clearly fans of your product, and you know what, maybe they do make a bit of money off of what they're doing, and maybe that's okay too. Like, I just feel like that's a very company legally kind of thing to protect your IPs in such a way, rather than say, we created this beautiful thing and now we're sharing it with the world. Which is why it's sort of sad that we talk about this on Core about Heroes, is that I want a map editor. I mean, Blizzard's a company known for, with a lot of its releases, and there have been a lot of companies in more PC classic gaming terms release map editors, mod editors. There's very few companies that support that kind of thing right now. You've got Bethesda, who likes to do that, and Blizzard hasn't been doing it. No talk about mod tools for Overwatch. No talk about mod tools there's none for Diablo. Not that that's a game where that's really expected, but none for Heroes. Like none for Hearthstone. I think that that particular company is moving away from it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I just think there's real lack of it out there, and maybe companies don't feel like they need to be doing that, but they shouldn't discourage people who put extra effort in when they're fans of their product, put their valuable time into making a cool thing. And I think I always get disgusted when I hear like the more egregious things that are clearly fan first, not trying to exploit and make money first. Like, there are those things, there are reasons to protect the IP from predators who do, like, there was one for Hearthstone, I think, where someone was selling a third-party service for to improve your Hearthstone play, and that got aggressively tasked. I forget what it was for though. So that's what I have to say about that. My message is, don't discourage people from creating, as long as it doesn't undermine your actual direct product or as an exploit. If people are fans of stuff, go ahead and let them make it, man.
Such a hippie.
End rant. Okay, well, that's been a dialogue tree. You have anything to add before we move on, Mr. Croft?
Nope, I'm sped.
All right, so let's move on to the inventory management.
Inventory management is a challenging and inexact science.
Yep, this is inventory management, where we answer the question, should you spend your cash or vendor trash? And we have brand new recommendations this week. Crofton, what would you like to tell our listeners to spend their money on or visit the dump for?
I'm going to make a rec this week, and I will tell you right now that that this is again not video game related. I am playing multiple games at once, but as I've said on this show, and this applies to everything, I want to finish it or really get a good sense of it before I recommend or do not recommend. So I just finished the first season of this podcast. It's called Serial, and for those of you who don't know, it is the #1 podcast on iTunes, or pretty much was all of last year. So if you haven't heard of it, you may not listen to podcasts, in which case I wonder how you found this show. Maybe you're a friend of the family, in which case you should listen to Serial. Serial is interesting to me because it's a scripted podcast, and so there's no there's no likes, there's no whatever. It's really tight, and it's a story told in multiple parts, and it's the investigation of a cold case. Mm-hmm. It is super addictive and interesting, and I think there's 12 episodes. They're of varying length, but I really feel it's something that anybody could be interested in, and it really makes the bus ride just zoom by. So for all of you who like a good mystery, Serial, that's Serial and not like the breakfast cereal, is the podcast for you. So check that out. It's free.
Nice. Well, I've heard a lot about Serial. It's to the chagrin, I think, of people who do broadcasting professionally. when everyone loves Serial so much, people start writing articles in like HuffPo about how podcasting's back or podcasting is a thing because of Serial, and everyone's like, what are we, chopped liver? We've been here this whole time. It's not back. But
it's interesting
it's a
though,
very
because
good program though. That's not to diminish the fact that it is quality.
it's a different thing, and like I've never listened to, but I probably will. It's a spin-off of This American Life or whatever, and I think it's of that style. But what is interesting to me is I had never listened to a scripted podcast before, and I see the benefits. And it's released much more like a TV show, like one episode a week, but they've planned them out and this sort of thing, and so it unfolds not unlike, I guess, somewhere like what I would imagine old radio shows used to. But honestly, it would capture my imagination so much. I would be trying to do other things because I normally listen to podcasts and like do grocery shopping and stuff. But I would find that I would just be like standing in front of the pasta aisle, being like, I gotta pause this thing, or I'm never gonna buy my spaghetti. So it's really it's really good.
I like picturing that. I've been there though, with like in the store with a podcast on, not shopping because I'm listening. All right, my recommendation this week is Battle Block Theatre. Have you heard of? Well, you know this game. You've been over at my house playing it, Crofton.
Honestly, it's a good rec, Bo, and it's by the Behemoth, right, who made Castle Crashers?
Yeah, so the Behemoth got a good rep as an indie studio, Castle Crashers, which I should recommend on this show too at some point. But Battle Block Theatre is a really fun game. Granted, I keep starting it and never getting the whole way through, but it is very fun. It's narrated. It has a very jokey style where nothing is too serious. You know, it's a game, and the world
has that Behemoth look too.
Yeah,
you know,
like
Alien Hominid, Castle Crashers, all those things look kind of...
It's got a very comic introduction, and it's a very bizarre, almost macabre world that's very cute and cuddly. So there's a lot of things that sort of you don't like, opposites that juxtapose together create like an eerie but fun game. And it's a platformer. I mean, in its purest form, it's like there's a bunch of cats in the audience, and you perform a platformer level for the audience of cats by collecting gems and just run through the level. And you don't really die. You get to respawn. It's more of a racing thing where you have to like get through to a certain time and hit all the gems and get a score at the end of it. But it's great fun, and the best part about it is it's 2-player co-op. That
is the best part. Honestly, I could almost like, since I played it with you, like I always think about playing it with somebody else again, but like I couldn't play it, I don't think, by myself because I know how much fun it is co-op.
There are literal mechanics that like are better with friends because literally you can help up your friends off ledges, you can toss them places to, complete goals in the levels, and there's a level editor in this game. So you can play community levels as well. It's a fantastically envisioned game. I think it was recently on sale on Steam, so this is a bit late as a recommend for a sale, but add it to your wish list and check that game out if you're looking for a great couch co-op thing so you can, I don't know, we did talk about this on the show, but before the show, Crofton was educating me that Netflix and chill meant to have sex. So you might want to steam and chill, like with your girlfriend, which might mean actually play this video game and just chill out on the couch. But maybe that means sex too. I don't know. Your relationship is your business, but it's a good couch co-op game. That was a weird aside that I didn't go anywhere.
It is a good couch co-op game. Maybe I'll play it with my wife.
I just wanted to work the Netflix and chill conversation into the show because I didn't know it meant sex.
Yeah, for the record, he didn't know it meant sex. It means sex. Don't use it if you don't mean sex. But didn't Bill Murray
coin this? Anyways, I have to look into the history of this. But it means sex, apparently, so don't Netflix and chill with your aunt.
That's true.
Or your
unless
uncle,
you're not blood relatives,
parents.
if you know what I'm saying.
It's good that you pointed that out because I might have sent a tweet out to that effect and embarrassed
me
myself.
and my mom are going to Netflix and chill tonight.
Yes, and we watch Netflix together. I go over to her house and we'll check out, a show or something. Like, so if I tweeted that and then like said the code word for sex, man, I'd be so screwed. I'd be screwed for life. And I'd also have psychological problems. More than I already have.
More than you already have, yeah. All right. Well, before we move into the fan favorite section of this show, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping, Bo.
Yeah, I tried to set you up for a seg. So if you have psychological problem, or why don't you?
If you have psychological problems and can't get enough of the show, then please visit exmpodcast.com. You can reach us on Twitter at EXM Podcast. Follow us, please. Facebook.com/EXM Podcast. Like us, please. exmpodcast@gmail.com. Send us anything you wanted to hear us talk about, your opinion and stuff. If we get mail, we will for sure answer it, read it live on the air, even if it's hate mail. If it's hate mail, I might put on some sort of accent when reading it to diffuse the tension, but still, we would read it. Twitch.tv/EXM Podcast is where we do the live stream for the show, generally Monday nights. And also, we have a sister podcast. It's a Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast where we review a random topic every week, picked by our random topic generator. Bo and I are on the show, as well as Mike Hodgins, who is not as good as us, but they're, how can you be really? So Bo and I are both individuals of an individual nature. Bo, if people want to reach you individually, how would they do that?
You can find me on the Twitter at Bo Schwartz, where you'll find me tweeting all about the Exclamation Podcast, the Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast, and core. All the things that we do for your ear holes.
And you can follow me at Crofton Steers on Twitter as well. So now, housekeeping over. We have one last segment, Bo.
Before we move on, because I feel like this is a public service for you and for our listeners, Google He-Man Star Wars trailer. All right? Basically, to set this up, it's the music of the Force Awakens music to a fan-made He-Man trailer. Check it out. All right. Next, we're moving to a segment that we like to call what, Crofton?
Mastergame Theatre.
It's now time for Mastergame Theatre. Yeah. We need to have an audience applauding as part of that sound. I have to update it.
So Mastergame Theatre, for those of you who don't know, is where we take a quote from a video game. We perform it as an outro to the show. And with all the talk about the Metal Gear Solid remake, we are doing a Metal Gear quote. And honestly, there are so many to pick. There is no series I can think of that is chattier than Metal Gear with ridiculous quotes. So I was looking for a super ridiculous one. I found one. Thanks to Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, sort of the apex of the craziness of this series. It's by Old Snake, not to be confused with Naked Snake, Solid Snake, Liquid Snake, or Venomous Snake.
Is there a snake?
I don't think so. So, Bo, do you want to do this one or do you want me to do it? Pretty much you just got to speak like an old man who smoked a lot of cigarettes.
So, like this.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like that, and that's okay. I'll give it a go. Unless you really want to do it, but I can.
No, I don't because I sound like a 12-year-old boy. It's really hard for me to get deep to that register. So you hit it. So as Old Snake from Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, I give you Bo Schwartz.
The age of deterrence has become the age of control, all in the name of averting catastrophe from weapons of mass destruction. And he who controls the battlefield controls history. War has changed. When the battlefield is under total control, war becomes routine. I don't even know what I was saying, dude. Was it good?
It was so ridiculous.
Yeah. Did I channel? The age of deterrence has become the age of control.
I could have never read that because I would have been broken out laughing too hard.
I wasn't even thinking about what I was saying. I'm literally just what do they call it? Dictating or whatever. Just it was fun. It was good. And now my throat hurts because I went into that register.
Yeah, good on you. You're an acting prodigy, Bo Schwartz.
So just to talk a little bit about that He-Man thing, because I needed to drop it in. It was so fucking good. It made me want to watch He-Man again. And I know the movie is a giant turd. It's a piece of turd. But the trailer was so
I've actually never seen Masters of the Universe. Like that, I don't get me wrong. I watched the shit out of that animated show as a kid.
Yeah. But
I've never
I
seen-
mean, when you see the trailer, you're gonna know it looks like a turd, but it just works. Like something, it's that music. I think it's a testament to the music and sound, because it's like it's so good. It's crazy. It's weird.
Whatevs. I will check it out, but dude, I want to play me some Rocket League, and I gotta piss again, so I'm gonna have to sign out
All right,
of
man.
the live stream.
All right, so live stream. Thanks for checking in with us, and yeah, I noticed you, Carito814. Thanks for the props on the Batman voice. I was doing actually old Snake? What is he called? Old Snake.
I'll let you guys have a
I'm doing
conversation
Old
as I
Spice
run
Snake.
to the facilities.
All right. Anyways, thanks for checking out. Check out our VODs, exm.podcast.com. All right, later.